And just for absolute funsy beans, I'm going to go through and set up a really crappy looking nCloth tie. It's going to be great. So again, this is definitely something that you would want to do in your actual rig file, but I did not save that separately, so this is all I have. And I think that the pelvis is pretty much the closest thing that I'm going to find here to like a neck. So this person is just going to have like a weird tie loincloth is apparently what's happening with this right now. So anywho, I'm just going to, like I said, this is not going to be by any means a pretty looking tie. I'm just going to extrude some random pieces of geometry down. I'm not even really going to make this particularly tie shaped. I'm just going to kind of maybe make it a little bit less catastrophic looking. Great. And here's going to be our button thing, and I'm just going to go ahead and extrude this out a little bit so it looks less, I'm not going to say less stupid because this whole thing looks terrible, but here we go. Alright, so I'm just going to affix this tie to the person's waist, like one does. And I'm also not going to pay a huge amount of attention to you know, if this positioning makes sense, because obviously this is a really, really trashy, weird demo. Alright, so what I'm going to do is go ahead and make, I should get rid of all this other stuff from our other nCloths in. I'm going to go ahead and make the nCloth. So just grab the tie, do create nCloth. I know I'm going to need some transform constraints on this to basically lock that in place, so I'm going to go nConstraint transform, and just make sure that that is actually working. Cool, we have a dumb stretchy tie that's kind of staying in place, so grab your control on your pelvis, grab your dynamic constraint, and do constrain, parent constraint. And then the other thing that we want to do is take our nucleus and make sure that the start frame is set to -10. Just so that we don't have, like, you'll notice when we first start the simulation, we get that, like, stupid looking drop. And actually you can see it's already pretty much working. But it seems like I've already... where am I going? Sorry. 5 seconds. Oh, my bad. Okay, so I already had a nucleus in the frame. If you're making a scene from scratch, you would want to set this to a few frames before your animation so that you don't get, again, that weird sort of, like, initial stretching of the animation. But basically now we have this really stupid piece of cloth that's going to follow along with the geometry. It looks really insane. My scale, or I don't think my seam is modeled to scale, which certainly doesn't help. But if we want this to intersect with the body, we would need to grab all the pieces of geometry that it could connect to, and go to nCloth, create passive collider. Now when we restart this, it should at least, you know, hit the legs and be affected by the legs, which obviously is a good thing. This really is like a terrible looking loincloth. So in this case, there's a few things that we can do to maybe make this look a little bit less crazy. So there's a few things that kind of like red flag to me, I guess, in terms of this tie. The first is that it is compressing in on itself sideways, which looks really strange. So if we go and we just, that looks like to me a compression resistance issue. So basically, if we set that higher, the tie should not collapse in on itself so much. And then the other thing that you might want to look at, and ties are nice because they're really, you can get away with not a huge amount of geometry. So it looks like I probably also maybe want to turn up a little bit of bend resistance, possibly, and then break my cloth because it's clipping through itself. But maybe a little bit of bend resistance so it's not quite so ridiculously floppy. That seems like it would also maybe help. And then maybe making this slightly heavier and like increasing the mass a little bit will also make it less likely to fly up in the air. Damp will often sort of, not slow down a sim, but like make it less prone to like small motions. So I probably turned that up a little bit too high, but now you can see it's, you know, at least not being as insane as it was before. So I'm not really going to go through a whole lot of settings on this. I mostly just wanted to be like, look, it's a tie. But that's, I mean, you know, one way to make a pretty simple, basic little tie. And then obviously just kind of play with the settings until it looks a little bit less goofy. So once you're happy with your animation, what you can do is basically, you can cache the, what did I do down here. You can cache the animation and then, sorry, you can cache the animation and then once you're done with it, you can extrude the whole thing and just push that in a little bit. And you might need to do a mesh display reverse on that, but basically that will give you mesh display reverse. That'll give you a cloth that actually has some thickness, because obviously it's still bad to just have random planes. And I found that that's kind of the easiest way to do things, to just add that extra little extrude at the end. It doesn't seem to mess with the sim too much. Just kind of like hangs out there. But yeah, so that is Crappy Tie in barely under 6 minutes. Yay.